This channel is made possible by viewers like you. My viewers, subscribers, and patrons greatly help to keep this channel going. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for all of you. Please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any uploads. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, please check out my Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you'll get access to what I'm working on, previews of upcoming content, and even early videos, along with other tier options for those that are interested. Thank you, and now on to the video. How many of you can remember back to when the original Dead Island was announced? It was where we saw that really awesome trailer with most of it playing in reverse. It got us wrapped up into the action and honestly started to care for some of these characters, and we didn't even know the names of any of them. No gameplay was shown since this was an announcement reveal, but it did sort of help to sell a tone for the eventual gameplay and in-game stuff. I for one remember the game finally coming out, that there was a very vocal group that was very disappointed with what the game provided based on that first trailer. That reveal appeared to say that we would be getting an emotionally charged story, where we were going to get wrapped up into these characters' lives and adventure and then hope that they all can make it out alive. The full game honestly wasn't like this at all. There was a story there, but it failed to move me on any level seen in the trailer. Many hung this game on the marketing for it. I try to come at it from a different angle. Marketing and trailers are done in such a way to get us invested in the product they are trying to sell, and that often means that there is a level of deception. So I do think that there is an argument for the reveal trailer being deceptive, but it also did its job. It got everyone invested in the game, and they hadn't even played it yet, but they were talking about it. I try to spend most of my time on discussing what the actual game provides, and was that any good? And for Dead Island, it's a pretty good game, very fun, addictive, and a bit underrated as well. Dead Island provides you with options for both melee and ranged weapons, but the focus very much is on the up-close and personal melee combat. The combat is violent, bloody, and satisfying. All manner of different zombies will try to take you down, and it's your job to help your crew of survivors level up, find better weapons, and get off the island. You are rewarded for almost everything you do, from kills to quests, and even finding new blueprints for better modifications for your weapons. Stamina plays a big part into the combat, and something that you'll need to keep an eye out for, or you'll end up dying a lot. Dead Island is what I would call a very fun game, and honestly a great one to relax to or play with friends. The story really isn't good, so you'll mostly ignore it, and just chat and joke around with your friends as you enjoy the gameplay. That is where the game is at its best. It is janky for sure, but it's very fun. Let's go over some of the basics. The focus of the combat is primarily placed on the melee. The stamina is at the center of this. Pretty much every action you perform will use some form of stamina. That means attacking, running, and even jumping will use some amount of stamina. You'll rely on this for both your offensive as well as your defensive options. Your first instinct might be to rush in and start swinging, but depending on where you are in the game, you might not be able to get away with it. In the first area on the beach, you're probably okay, while in the city, it's easy to get overwhelmed, based on the higher amount of enemy density. And if you used all of your stamina to attack a set of zombies, if rushers show up, you won't be able to have the stamina to fight them well, or even run away. This means that using the stamina well is a bit more skill-based than you might think. It is easy to look at the gameplay and see a mindless slasher, but it does have a bit more going on under the hood than you might think, and proper planning and assessing is rewarded. Your jump also doubles as a dodge, because in Dead Island you can perform both a side and back jump. This is a great way to pivot out of an encounter or better tackle some of the bigger foes. The kick is your best friend since it allows you to push back enemies, and if you want to save on weapon durability if you want to slam on some down zombie heads. Since melee is the focus, that means you'll be using everything from machetes, blades, tools, hammers, paddles, bats, and a lot more. The impact and sound are sold very well. You can feel that appropriate smack and punch from more blunt weapons, and get that satisfying slicing and squishy sounds from the blades. The damage system is a highlight as well, since you'll see the skin and bones break as you hit an enemy. Along with all of this, the expected dismemberment that you want to see in a game like this. The engine does hold the transition of the damage back a little bit, but it is still a good detail to see. One thing that never gets old is how you can throw your weapons at enemies. You end up doing a lot more damage, but you now need to retrieve your weapon from an enemy, and if you throw one one at one of the larger foes, it might still be sticking out of them. It's funny how you can pull your weapons back out of a body and then throw it right back at them again. Plus it's always satisfying to throw whatever you have at an enemy bolting right for you. As I mentioned before, guns are featured as well, and are mainly used for your encounters with other humans. Now there is certainly a roughness to the general feel of the game, even down to your basic movement, but the guns feel very off to use. Considering that this developer has a past in first-person shooters, it is odd how bad they feel to use here. Shootouts come across as clunky, intense encounters. Now don't get me wrong, I still use some of the firearms because of the power they provide, but they could have felt a lot better to use. But maybe some of this was done on purpose by pushing the player to use more melee options. I don't know. Dead Island does a good job with the exploration. It gives you plenty of room right out of the gate to pick a direction and see what you can find. Also, the open world is broken out into different sections that you load into. For example, the beach provides more wider spaces with only zombie enemies, whereas the city is much more narrow and it's a lot easier to get overwhelmed by the horde or even cornered. As a result, the enemy density is a lot higher here when compared to the beach. Plus, this is where you'll fight your first human enemies. You have a few areas that you go to, and each one has their own unique feel to them, along with how they're structured, enemy types, and density. Progression is addictive, with you leveling up through gaining experience points. It is here where you can learn new skills to help you better your chances at survival. Side missions are worth doing, not just for the experience points, but many of them will often net you with a new blueprint. You can use weapons and supplies to create modified weapons that are much stronger than the ones you'll find lying around. Plus, this is where some of the personalization comes into play, as you choose what enhancements you want to have based on what you have found. Jank is everywhere in Dead Island. Some of it's hilarious, like the animations in the cutscenes. Everything looks so stiff. Plus, many of the characters' eyes look like they're being sucked into their head. I did have a few glitches that hurt my progress. Usually a restart would fix this, but there was one instance where I lost many of my weapons because I threw them at an enemy, then died, and then none of them were there when I came back from a checkpoint. Thankfully, the game throws a lot of supplies and new weapons at you often, but this stuff is still annoying when it happened. So yeah, it is janky, but most of the time the jank made me laugh. Dead Island was one of those games that I played right when it came out, before much of the patches or even some of the fixes were released. I enjoyed it a lot at launch. The combat was fun with addictive progression. The violence was very enjoyable, and many elements of the jank were pretty funny. But it was also a situation where I never finished the game. I didn't find anything particularly wrong with it, or something that made me want to drop it altogether. But I did get pretty far, and it was one of those that I dropped and was distracted by something else. Dead Island was always a game I wanted to go back to, check that box and beat it, and really be able to dig into it more than I initially did, and play it proper and then complete it. Plus, at the same time, Dead Island 2 was coming out, and I was interested in that, and I felt that to better appreciate this potential sequel and what it had to offer, I would need to play and complete the first. Dead Island is an interesting game because I found it to be very fun, and one that I would recommend, but I think the game engine held back what the developers were trying to achieve. I know that Techland would go on to do the Dying Light games, and leave Dead Island behind, but even with Dead Island 2, you can feel the upgrade in many areas of the game, especially with that layer of jank that is found in many of the elements of 1. With 2 coming out now a few generations after the first, I think there is a group of fans who have never played this game. Now, don't expect the same level of polish or feel as 2, but this is one that you should try. It is either fun in solo or co-op play. Have you played the original Dead Island? What were your thoughts on it and the reveal trailer compared to what we got in the full release? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell. And if you would like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description. And thank you very much for watching.